Global warming and climate change are not only interlinked, but quite similar in terms of topics. The words global warming are self-explanatory, but the reasons and impacts of the global phenomenon are not that simple to understand. Whether or not you have previously heard of global warming and climate change, this is perfect for enhancement of your knowledge regarding the topics. You will be introduced to the topics in a comprehensive manner, along with a detailed discussion of current topics and views. This is your perfect guide to global warming and climate change. You no longer have to search the internet aimlessly for solid facts and easy-to-understand language explaining this topic. This has been perfectly written for a better understanding by just about anyone. As a modern citizen, you are required to have sound knowledge on this topic. Prepare yourself to have your entire perspective of climate and the global environment change as a whole. Introduce yourself to the latest happenings regarding global warming and political controversies regarding the issues. This will help you understand the smallest of your actions and their impact on the world in a much more defined manner. From the basic definitions of climate change and global warming to the precautionary measures you can take as an individual, you will be informed in detail about it all comprehensively. By the end, you will be able to truly act like a responsible global citizen, aware of their actions on the environment. You will be able to do your bit for society by contributing to global warming in the least possible way. You are about to uncover intricate yet critical details that are generally ignored, but hold the utmost importance in the current global situation. Once you have been enlightened with a well-researched knowledge, you will finally be ready to take charge of your responsibilities as a citizen and focus upon the implementation of the solutions being offered. If you lack the slightest of clues about global warming and topics like greenhouse effect and climate change, then you have chosen the perfect guide for yourself. Everything that you should know about these topics will be covered in detail, starting from the very basic to the major concepts that you should be very well aware of in order to function in this world effectively. The best part about this is that it can serve as a complete guide for you and those around you. Not only will you benefit from the learning, but you will have the opportunity of guiding your family and those around you in a simplistic manner. You are about to get a strong grip on the topic, and the only thing left for you to do now is to start listening to the first chapter of this comprehensive guide. What are global warming and climate change? You can't really always think of things or phenomena with enough power to affect the entire life form across the globe. Though natural disasters of a high magnitude, such as erupting volcanoes, tsunamis, and earthquakes, have the potential to directly and indirectly affect thousands of people, their effects are limited to specific regions. Global panic and terror are the results of terrorist attacks, but these effects are also localized to some extent. Nuclear explosions are catastrophic and have the potential of fallout residue in the form of toxic radioactive debris around complete continents, but even a nuclear explosion does not directly affect the entire world. Global warming is the slow rising of the world's temperature. It is not only different from the aforementioned phenomena, but it has the potential of posing the biggest threat to mankind. Until or unless this issue is dealt with, it can easily contribute to the transformation of the very planet we live on, whilst making the Earth's climate far more erratic and causing an array of different species to become extinct. Those living in developing countries are bound to be affected the most by such a situation. What is global warming? Think of yourself to be living in a timber shack somewhere in Alaska. Since the weather will be quite chilly there, you are expected to build a huge fire of some sort and use piles of wood to keep it going. The fire appears to be the best possible solution in such weather. The shack will become warm in a gradual manner and eventually become cozy. Owing to the warmness of the shack, the surrounding atmosphere and ground are bound to lose their heat rather quickly. If the fire offers equal heat to the shack as the warmth it loses, then the shack is estimated to remain at the same temperature. However, if you make a bigger fire, then the shack will become hotter in an increasing manner as a result. It will not take long for you to start getting uncomfortable due to the high temperature. You might end up regretting having made the fire in the first place. However, once you start the fire, there isn't much you can do to stop it. The shack is bound to get hotter as more and more wood is used. Global warming tends to work in a similar fashion. Owing to the different kinds of actions that humans take, the Earth is gradually getting warmer year by year. If you consider the short-term periods, then the warmth will not appear that noticeable. However, looking at the longer term will offer you better knowledge on the subject. Since the 1900s, the entire Earth has warmed up about 0.8 degrees Celsius. However, things are getting more serious with the passage of time. The global warming phenomenon is predicted to cause an increase of about 2 to 5 degrees Celsius to the global temperature over the next century. The stats don't end here. 75% chance of an increase in the warmth of global temperature by 2 to 3 degrees exists, and there is a 50% chance of an annual 5-degree increase in the global temperature. 5 degrees does not seem like a big deal if you don't really think about it, but you need to know that this is approximately the same as the difference between the world today and the last ice age. The planet has warmed up by 5 degrees since the last ice age over a period of 5,000 years. What is climate change? Climate is the example of weather in a specific spot. The amount of sunlight and rainfall it gets, how windy it is, etc. The world's weather is completely controlled by the sun. Since the Earth rotates on a tilted axis, diverse parts of our planet are heated by various amounts at various times of the year, making a few places hotter than others and bringing on the seasons. The temperature variations between one part of the world and another cause contrast in air pressure, creating winds, storms, and even hurricanes. The sun's heat additionally warms the seas and oceans unevenly, driving ocean currents, which in a few ways are similar to submerged winds, starting with one place and then on to the next. Hurricane in Union City, Oklahoma, 1973. Scientists are of the belief that more prominent measures of carbon dioxide in the air and hotter temperatures on Earth will essentially change the climate over the entire planet. This climate change is as of now evident in parts of the world. If you live in a chilly spot like Alaska or Greenland, you may think a touch of global warming sounds like a great idea. But climate change does not, as a matter of course, mean things will get hotter. A few places will become hotter generally, but most places will essentially see more sporadic and unusual weather. That could mean heavier rainfall, more snow, longer times of drought, more severe storms and hurricanes, and more regular heat waves. Climate change is not really anything new. The Earth's climate has changed frequently over a huge number of years, sometimes getting colder and sometimes warmer. Everybody thinks about ice ages, those times in history when the Earth was far colder than it is currently. The climate change people discuss today is, by all accounts, diverse. Most scientists believe it is caused by precise global warming, itself caused by a steady increase in the use of fossil fuels. Though customary climate change makes the Earth in general either hotter or cooler, present-day climate change is going to make the climate considerably more whimsical. Hotter in a few places, cooler in others. Drier in a few places, wetter somewhere else. More or less, climate change means the kind of weather we experience will change, maybe significantly in a few places, over the years. Scientists have been debating this issue for around 20 years now. So, what's the official position? The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, which examines key experimental research on the issue done by a large number of scientists, states that greenhouse gases have expanded extraordinarily as an after-effect of human actions subsequent to 1750, and now far surpass pre-modern qualities. And the vast majority of the observed increase in global temperatures since the mid-20th century is likely because of this. It is also likely that there has been critical anthropogenic, human-caused, warming in the course of recent years, found in the middle value of over every landmass, aside from Antarctica. As one of the world's leading climate scientists, Stefan Rahmstorf of Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research describes the current experimental perspective of global warming. Depends on many years of research and great many studies. The remarkable agreement came to is found in the announcements of numerous worldwide and national expert bodies which have widely and basically surveyed the experimental proof. Professor Rahmstorf has assembled an extremely helpful climate change fact sheet outlining the confirmation in 2 or 3 pages. The BBC has created a convenient one-page outline called Climate Change Explained in 6 Graphics, which contains diagrams demonstrating climate patterns over the last few years. Search those outlines and you will see that the Earth's temperature has increased methodically throughout the last century. Sea levels have risen, and carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuels have expanded exponentially. Most climate scientists believe these things are connected. They consider that burning fossil fuels causes carbon dioxide emanations, which raise the temperature, which then causes sea levels to rise. Since records of the weather go back just 100 years or so, in what capacity can scientists predict with certainty that the climate has been changing over any longer period? It turns out that the Earth keeps its very own characteristic climate record in numerous astonishing ways. For instance, as ice has shaped year upon year at the poles, old ice has been covered underneath with rises of air caught inside it. The air pockets provide a record of what the air was like on Earth when the ice shaped, and in this manner what the climate was like in years gone by. Using drills, scientists can separate ice centers, long thin pipes loaded with ice, test the air at various depths, and figure the amount of carbon dioxide contained. If they can tell how old the ice is, they can use an ice center as a sort of chart of how the quantity of carbon dioxide has changed over time. Scientists can likewise observe changes in the climate using sea dregs, tests of covered dust, and other once living matter. Research like this can let us know what the climate was like many, many years ago. Albeit most scientists believe in global warming, it's important to note that a small minority do not. Most agree that the Earth is warming, but not that burning fossil fuels and human carbon dioxide emissions are the reasons. The climate change cynics contend that rises in the Earth's temperature are either not happening at all, or might be caused by different things, and are anyway normal variations in the climate that have been occurring for centuries. Lately, nonetheless, fewer and fewer scientists disagree with the generally held position that global warming and climate change are truly happening. Some people could at present not be right about global warming, but that is turning out to be progressively unlikely. Throughout the last couple of decades, human lifespan, their financial actions, the power they use, the world's population, and their carbon dioxide emissions have all expanded relentlessly. Can the world keep going at such a pace without encountering a natural or social disaster? Then again, would reducing the lifespan or power usage cause major financial change and social issues of an alternate kind? In what manner can countries adjust the need to grow economically with the need to ensure the Earth remains safe? How can scientists predict what will happen in the future? If we recognize what's happened before, we can frequently make sense of what will happen in the future. If you know it's rained each Tuesday throughout the previous 5 years, you may dare to suppose that it will rain next Tuesday as well, and you may well be correct. Gauging the weather is a little more complicated than this, but it basically means using information from the past to predict the future. Determining the Earth's climate, the long-term weather for the whole planet, is more complicated still. Scientists make figures of the climate using what is known as a PC model. This is a substantial and extremely complex project running on a supercomputer, one of the world's most powerful. It's basically a gathering of mathematical statements that portray how distinctive parts of the climate work. Every mathematical statement contains variables, amounts that change, like temperature, rainfall, measure of carbon dioxide, and sea level. Taken all together, the mathematical statements portray generally how climate functions. In what capacity can the scientists be sure of that? They use a procedure called adjusting the model. In the event that they begin the model with information from 1900, say, and request that it keep running forward 50 years, it ought to anticipate the weather in 1950. The scientists can compare the model's forecasts and the real information for 1950 and see how accurate the model is. In the event that it makes exact forecasts, they can run it forward into the future to see what it will be in 2050, 2100, or even later. The further into the future the model runs, the less precise it is likely to be. One reason a few people are wary about global warming is that they question whether PC models are adequate to display climate decades into the future. To create a PC model, scientists need to make certain suppositions about how climate functions. Since climate is extremely complicated and PCs are only so capable, these suppositions are typically rearrangements. The cynics are worried that the PC models are excessively inexact and basic, and they may not reflect how things work in reality. The causes of global warming and climate change. What causes global warming? Global warming is caused by a phenomenon known as the greenhouse effect. A greenhouse, or glasshouse, is useful for developing plants because it traps heat inside and stays hotter than the climate around it. The greenhouse effect. The Earth's environment behaves like a colossal greenhouse. However, it traps heat in a different way. Gases high in the atmosphere, for example carbon dioxide and methane, act like a huge piece of curved glass wrapped right around the planet. The sun's beams, generally light and short wavelength, high vitality bright radiation, go straight through this layer of gases and warm up the Earth. The warming planet emits heat, longer wavelength infrared radiation, which emanates out towards space. Some of this active radiation does not go through the atmosphere, but rather is reflected back down to Earth, viably catching heat and keeping the planet around 33 degrees hotter than it would otherwise be. This is known as a normal greenhouse effect, and it really is perfect. Without it, the Earth would be much colder, making it impossible to support the tremendous different varieties of life that it does. The enhanced greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect is nothing to worry about were it not for one vital thing. Following the Industrial Revolution in the 18th and 19th centuries, when coal-burning steam engines were being used on a huge scale, people have been using more and more energy. Vehicles, for instance, which were invented in the mid-19th century, work by burning gasoline, petrol, with oxygen from the air to make heat in a compound reaction called combustion. As a side effect, combustion radiates, or discharges, carbon dioxide gas, the gas that we breathe out. Similarly, power stations use combustion to produce our power, by burning fuels like coal, gas, and oil, so they emit carbon dioxide as well. The vast majority of the power we use is made by burning these fossil fuels, creating colossal amounts of carbon dioxide, which are known as carbon dioxide emanations, or carbon dioxide emissions. The carbon dioxide floats up into the atmosphere and makes the Earth's greenhouse gas layer somewhat thicker. This is known as the enhanced greenhouse effect. Thus, a greater amount of the sun's heat gets trapped inside the atmosphere and the planet warms up. To summarize, burning fossil fuels radiates carbon dioxide, which expands the greenhouse effect and heats the planet, a procedure we call global warming. This is regularly portrayed as an anthropogenic procedure, which essentially means people caused it. Although a small minority of individuals argue with this, the dominant part of the world's climate scientists believe that global warming is likely caused by human greenhouse gas emissions. Is global warming getting worse? Because of all the fossil fuels we burn, there is currently more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than there ever has been in the last 420,000 years. In any case, the real measure of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is still moderately little. Before industrial times, it was around 280 sections for every million, ppm. Today, it's around 380 ppm. That means that if you had a piece of the atmosphere about as large as your room, all the carbon dioxide in it would take up 380 millionths of space, or a large portion of the volume of a shoebox. Doesn't sound much to worry about, right? But the important thing is that the amount of carbon dioxide is increasing. In the last 150 years or so, people have increased the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere by around a third, and that is a major change for something as finely tuned as our planet. A great many people have no idea of the amount of carbon dioxide they produce every day. The Carbon for Children website gives you some idea of what your own carbon dioxide emissions look like. The United States produces about 20 tons of carbon dioxide for every one of its citizens every year. Or, to put it another way, enough carbon dioxide to cover the whole land surface of the United States 30 centimeters, or 1 foot, deep. A large portion of this gas ends up in the atmosphere and contributes to global warming. The issue is continuing to get worse. Currently, 80% of our power comes from fossil fuels. According to the International Energy Institute, this could increase to 90% by 2020. What's more, the amount of energy individuals use is increasing as well, simply because developing nations, for example China and India, are becoming wealthier. According to the US government's Energy Information Administration, world power use will increase by 71% somewhere between now and 2030. In summary, if things proceed as they are, we'll soon be using about twice as much power and getting significantly more of it from fossil fuels. Without immediate action, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere will keep on increasing, and the Earth will keep on heating up. As such, global warming will get worse. Impacts of global warming and climate change. As the Earth warms up, the oceans warm up as well, gradually but altogether. Water expands as it warms. As the oceans are heated, the water they contain takes up more volume, and this makes the level of the oceans rise. The oceans likewise rise when ice masses and ice sheets melt, adding more water into the oceans. Sea level rise is one of the major effects of global warming. That won't worry you if you live in the center of a country, or up on high ground, in Colorado or Montana, USA, for instance, or in Birmingham, England. But in the event that you live close to sea level in Florida or California, or in a country like Bangladesh, or on a low-lying island, for example one of the Maldives in the Indian Ocean, then there's a growing, but small, risk your home may disappear. Currently, the world's sea levels are rising at 3 centimeters, a little more than an inch, every decade. Scientists believe sea levels could rise, all things considered, by anything from 10 centimeters to 1 meter, 4 inches to 3 feet. Another extremely evident result of global warming is that the North and South poles are melting drastically. According to the Arctic Climate Impact Assessment, ACIA, sea ice in the Arctic has decreased by around 8% in the course of the last 30 years. That means enough ice to cover the length of Norway, Sweden and Denmark, or Texas and Arizona, has now vanished. By 2100, the North Pole might be warm to the point that its ice vanishes totally in the summer. Antarctica at the South Pole contains around 90% of the world's ice. Here a few ice sheets are melting quickly, draining water into the seas and creating worries about substantial rises in sea level. But the precise effect of climate change is unclear. It is additionally prompting more prominent snowfall, which is adding to ice masses in a few places while they are decreasing elsewhere. If the majority of Antarctica's ice were to melt, it has been calculated that global sea levels would rise by 80 meters, 260 feet. Luckily, that is not likely to happen. Melting Antarctic ice is contributing just around 15% of the rise in sea level that is currently in progress. Why do these things matter? The ecosystems in various locales of our planet are finely tuned. In the polar locales, for instance, plants and animals are adjusted to living in the cold, with little sunlight and barely any rainfall. In the tropics, plants and animals are used to a much warmer and wetter climate. As global warming speeds up, numerous parts of the Earth will see their climate change fundamentally. The poles might turn out to be too warm for a large number of the animals that live there. If climate change happens gradually, everything would have sufficient energy to adjust. Plants that like the cold could, bit by bit, move northwards and develop at higher ranges. But with a quicker climate change, plants and animals will be unable to adjust rapidly enough, and many will become extinct. Consider the Arctic, where normal temperatures have risen twice as quickly as of late with respect to the rest of the world. Polar bears rely upon sea ice for hunting and moving from one place to the next. If all the late spring sea ice were to vanish, as anticipated, polar bears might not even survive. A huge number of migratory birds fly to the Arctic every mid-year to breed for this reason. But global warming will affect also the plants that can flourish in the Arctic. Around 50% of natural breeding grounds for a few birds could vanish, debilitating the species that rely on them. Caribou, reindeer, are as of now in a decline in numerous places because their tundra and natural surroundings are beginning to vanish. What's more, it's not only the Arctic that will be influenced. Climate change will make life difficult for plants and animals everywhere throughout the world. In the tropics, for instance, warmer oceans will kill off parts of coral reefs, with unfortunate effects on the delicate, brilliant ecosystems that rely on them. A few predictions say climate change could make 30 to 40% of the world's species extinct. What impact will climate change have on people? People, obviously, are creatures as well, and despite the fact that we frequently overlook it, we are also part of the complex global ecosystem. What's occurring at the North Pole may appear to be remote and immaterial, but we are likely to feel the effects of climate change much closer to home. More sporadic weather examples could mean much more prominent storm damage and the loss of beachfront regions to rising seas. The insurance industry has been concerned about the effects of climate change for a long time. Scenes of El Niño are more extreme and more enduring, and right now happening around 3 times more frequently than a century ago. Floods are likely to affect some countries, droughts others. Some forecast that climate change flooding could make around 100 to 200 million people destitute by 2100. Incidentally, even in a world of rising sea levels and regularly more serious rainfall, many more people are likely to have to endure extreme water shortages. There will be other effects as well. Changes in climate will make it easier to develop crops in some places, but much harder in others. There might be growth underway in parts of the United States, but countries in Africa, for example, are anticipated to suffer. Generally speaking, the world's poorest peoples are likely to be hit hardest. Insects and disease are anticipated to spread much further with global warming. Mosquitoes, for instance, breed quicker in warmer climates, spreading diseases to more people. By 2100, in a warming world, intestinal sickness is expected to spread significantly, putting 66% of the world's population at risk, compared with only 45% at risk today. Preventing global warming. Now let's talk about all that we can do to stop global warming. The short answer is a straightforward one. To decrease the effect of climate change, we have to reduce global warming. That means producing less carbon dioxide emissions, and it may mean having to use less power or use it more proficiently. Continuing as we are, but with less power or more efficiently. Anyway, reducing emissions is both easy and difficult. It's extremely important for all of us to reduce our carbon dioxide emissions. You can replace the strong lights in your home, ones that make light by getting hot, and use energy-saving fluorescent lights. You can change your utility company so more of your power is produced using renewable energy. On the other hand, you could bike, walk, or take public transport every now and then, as opposed to using your car. You could put on a sweater as opposed to turning on the heating. Open your windows as opposed to using the air conditioning. These things are all simple to do and will have an immediate effect. But can we say they are enough? Solar panels. The real issue is that global trends are against us. Developing countries like India and China are becoming wealthier as people there start to earn more money. More people are buying cars and trying to emulate the sort of way of life that people appreciate in the United States and Europe. With global energy needs and fossil fuel use still expanding, significant climate change appears to be verging on unavoidable. That doesn't mean we ought to give up trying to stop it. With a major worldwide effort, we could have the ability to end the development of carbon dioxide emissions by 2100. If we can keep carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere to below 550 ppm, generally twice what they were before the Industrial Revolution, and around 45% higher than they are today, flooding caused by climate change in low-lying nations like Bangladesh will be decreased by as much as 80 to 90%. While it's easy for individuals to have an effect on global warming, governments believe that it's much harder. One concern is that measures to diminish carbon dioxide emissions might mean people consuming less power, thereby hurting economic growth. So if one nation really tries to get it together, The worry is that it might cause economic problems for other countries. This is why the United States declined to support a worldwide climate change agreement called the Kyoto Protocol. The agreement excluded developing countries, for example China, and the US government believed that all nations ought to join in. All the time, the world's governments continued to debate and procrastinate. Global warming is getting worse. The longer it takes to accomplish agreement, the worse things will get. In October 2006, the British government released a report by the well-known economist Sir Nicholas Stern. The Stern report found that it is much better to deal with climate change now, because the cost of putting it off till tomorrow will be enormous. Stern states that global monetary movement, measured by something many refer to as total national output, or GDP, could fall by up to 20% if the effects of climate change are truly extreme. On the other hand, putting resources into measures to stop climate change now would end up costing 20 times less. With the publication of the Stern report, scientists, financial experts and lawmakers finally had all the makings of talking the same language. Interestingly, some prominent climate change cynics have now reversed their position. Quite a long time ago, Professor Richard Muller of the University of California at Berkeley was particularly skeptical about global warming, so he set up the Berkeley Earth Surface Temperature Project to test the confirmation fairly and with an open mind, pretty much as you would expect a decent scientist to do. By July 2012, he declared in the New York Times more confidence in human-caused climate change than even the authority IPCC decision. Global warming is real. What's more, people are totally the cause. Indeed, even along these lines, governments have kept on dithering and putting off definite actions. In December 2015, a global summit in Paris, France, COP21, finally agreed to attempt to confine global temperature rise to under 2 degrees centigrade. While the arbitrators congratulated themselves on a pivotal accomplishment, pundits rushed to bring up that little is changing. The world is still on course for a much higher temperature rise and a possibly devastating climate change. One of the world's most persuasive climate scientists, James Hansen, depicted the Paris Agreement as a cheat, a fake, useless words. There is no activity, just guarantees. For whatever length of time that fossil fuels give the impression of being the least expensive energy out there, they will continue to be used. The bottom line is actually quite simple, really. There is a need for urgency in measures to be taken for handling climate change and global warming. What exactly is it that will awaken the world to this alarming situation? And if we finally manage to take action, will it be too late? Now, with the conclusion of this, you should pat yourself on the back, as you have successfully acquired the necessary information regarding climate change and global warming. You have the right kind of tools needed for acting like a responsible citizen. Now that you have learned all these new concepts, the most important step still remains undone. There is absolutely no point for you to learn all of these new techniques and understand the urgency of using them if you don't really implement them. You must translate all of this important knowledge into your daily life activities. You need to take control of things and the future of the planet on which you and your future generations will live. You can read or listen to as many books as you want, but you will not be able to achieve your vision until or unless you start implementing. This has taught you the basics, but the implementation and control are all up to you. You have the right kind of knowledge when it comes to priorities and the different techniques to be used for preventing global warming. The very first step for you to do now is to start evaluating. Begin with yourself and think about what is missing from your current lifestyle and daily activities. Implement the necessary changes in your lifestyle and focus on the betterment of the Earth. Go easy on yourself though, no need to overstress yourself. The best thing for you to do is to pass on this knowledge to those around you or tell them what you have learned. This will definitely count as your bit for society and the environment in general. You are responsible for the future of your generations, and it is only through small yet significant steps that we can prevent global warming from speeding up. Good luck with your efforts. Global warming and climate change are not only interlinked, but quite similar in terms of topics. The words global warming are self-explanatory, but the reasons and impacts of the global phenomenon are not that simple to understand. Whether or not you have previously heard of global warming and climate change, this is perfect for enhancement of your knowledge regarding the topics. You will be introduced to the topics in a comprehensive manner, along with a detailed discussion of current topics and views. This is your perfect guide to global warming and climate change. You no longer have to search the internet aimlessly for solid facts and easy-to-understand language explaining this topic. This has been perfectly written for a better understanding by just about anyone. As a modern citizen, it is not only different from the aforementioned phenomena, but it has the potential of posing the biggest threat to mankind. Until or unless this issue is dealt with, it can easily contribute to the transformation of the very planet we live on, whilst making the Earth's climate far more erratic and causing an array of different species to become extinct. Those living in developing countries are bound to be affected the most by such a situation. What is global warming? Think of yourself to be living in a timber shack somewhere in Alaska. Since the weather will be quite chilly there, you are expected to build a huge fire of some sort and use piles of wood to keep it going. The fire appears to be the best possible solution in such weather. The shack will become warm in a gradual manner and eventually become cozy. Owing to the warmness of the shack, the surrounding atmosphere and grounds in the current global situation. Once you have been enlightened with a well-researched knowledge, you will finally be ready to take charge of your responsibilities as a citizen and focus upon the implementation of the solutions being offered. If you lack the slightest of clues about global warming and topics like greenhouse effect and climate change, then you have chosen the perfect guide for yourself. Everything that you should know about these topics will be covered in detail, starting from the very basic to the major concepts that you should be very well aware of in order to function in this world effectively. The best part about this is that it can serve as a complete guide for you and those around you. Not only will you benefit from the learning, but you will have the opportunity of guiding your family and those around you in a simplistic manner. You are about to get a strong grip on the topic, and the only thing left for you to do now is to start listening to the first required to have sound knowledge on this topic. Prepare yourself to have your entire perspective of climate and the global environment change as a whole. Introduce yourself to the latest happenings regarding global warming and political controversies regarding the issues. This will help you understand the smallest of your actions and their impact on the world in a much more defined manner. From the basic definitions of climate change and global warming to the precautionary measures you can take as an individual, you will be informed in detail about it all comprehensively. By the end, you will be able to truly act like a responsible global citizen, aware of their actions on the environment. You will be able to do your bit for society by contributing to global warming in the least possible way. You are about to uncover intricate yet critical details that are generally ignored, but hold the utmost importance chapter of this comprehensive guide. What are global warming and climate change? You can't really always think of things or phenomena with enough power to affect the entire life form across the globe. Though natural disasters of a high magnitude, such as erupting volcanoes, tsunamis, and earthquakes, have the potential to directly and indirectly affect thousands of people, their effects are limited to specific regions. Global panic and terror are the results of terrorist attacks, but these effects are also localized to some extent. Nuclear explosions are catastrophic and have the potential of fallout residue in the form of toxic radioactive debris around complete continents, but even a nuclear explosion does not directly affect the entire world. Global warming is the slow rising of the world's temperature,